Has there ever been a murder in Antarctica? Well, this may be the one and only, but it is still unsolved. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Rodney Marks. Viewer discretion is advised. Rodney was born in March of 1968, and he was born in Australia. He would go on to attend the University of Melbourne, and then he eventually got his PhD from the University of New South Wales. He, at the time of this case, was an astrophysicist, an incredibly intelligent person, and his career would eventually take him to Antarctica, which brought him to the Amundsen Scott Station. It's also referred to as the Dome. It's like an underground station, which this was located at the South Pole. Now, Rodney had started his work there in 1997, and this case occurred in 2000. It was May 11th, 2000. Rodney came down with some sort of sickness. And for the next 36 hours, his illness seemed to be getting worse and worse. He would go to the station's doctor at least 3 times. But unfortunately, they were not able to diagnose whatever was wrong with him. And within a couple of days, 32-year-old Rodney Marks would die. The National Science Foundation would announce publicly that he died of natural causes. But what they didn't tell people at the time was that his death actually could not be explained. It was a mystery. And because of the remote location of this station and the fact that it was like in the middle of winter there, it became impossible to get Rodney to a proper, coroner. So they actually had to keep Rodney's body in a freezer for 6 months. And then after that 6 months had passed, they were able to finally transport his remains to New Zealand, where an autopsy would be conducted. And that's when the mystery comes in. Rodney had puncture wounds, like needle marks on his arms. However, they found not a single trace of any illegal substance in his body. And so what killed him? Well, methanol poisoning. He had ingested a large amount of methanol that eventually made him sick and then killed him. It was an excruciating couple of days for him. And then that's when speculation began. Did he do this to himself on purpose? He had an issue with alcohol in the past. However, when talking to literally everyone at the station, he was in really good spirits. And just based on his kind of behavior around the time he was sick, the base doctor, the coroner, and the people who worked there would basically all agree that there's just no way he did this to himself. Because most people wouldn't do something that caused them such excruciating pain and discomfort for days on end. And he was really panicked. He was really concerned. Then they speculated, well, maybe he took it accidentally. Maybe he diluted some alcohol with methanol in order to, stretch out the alcohol. But then they found out that the base was really well stocked with alcohol. So he wouldn't need to have done that. Even more strange was that there was no actual full bottles of methanol there at the base. All they had in terms of methanol had been diluted into cleaning supplies. So the fact that there was no methanol just in its true form there makes this just way more strange. And so the coroner and people investigating this case, eventually they came to this theory or conclusion that he did not do it to himself. It's hard to believe that this was done accidentally. And so the only other likely option here is foul play. Someone poisoned Rodney. And there were about 49 people on that base, so there were 49 suspects. And there was jurisdictional issues up the wazoo when it came to this case. So the base that he was working on was an American base. But the land the base was on was controlled by New Zealand. The investigation was being led by a detective from New Zealand. And, they wanted to interview all 49 people at that base, but only 13 of them ever actually came in to be interviewed or agreed to. And so when New Zealand asked the United States, well, we need information on all of these people who work there. We need their records, their files. The U.S. would not aid, and they would not help. And then the United States decided to conduct their own investigation into this, but they would not share whatever findings they had with the New Zealand investigators. And nobody knows what the United States knows about this case. Nothing has ever come out publicly about their investigation. And so what we're left with is a bizarre mystery. It sounds like they have ruled out intentional suicide, and it sounds like they've ruled out the idea that this could be accidental. All they really know is that his manner of death was methanol poisoning. But what led to it? Well, they're still listing that as undetermined. There is very, very little information about the people who were on the base with him. And if any side of the investigation, whether the United States or New Zealand, if they have suspects, they have not named them. But they also don't know if this was a murder. I was reading that Rodney's family, or at least his father, basically they don't really have much hope that this is ever going to be resolved. That because you have two, powerhouse kind of governments sort of going at each other, is there possibilities of cover-ups and whatnot? Well, his family doesn't believe that they're really ever going to get justice for him if justice needs to be served, and that answers will probably never come, leaving Rodney Marks as the one and only potential murderer at the South Pole, a mystery that will likely remain unsolved forever.